Hello and welcome back to another video in the Complete Web Dev series. We are in chapter 9 and in this lesson we are going to talk about data types in JavaScript. So just like we have different data types available to us in PHP and every other programming language, we have some data types available to us in JavaScript. And so just to make this a little simpler, I'm going to switch over to our screen here. Please make sure you comment, like, subscribe. That does help me out, and let me know if you have been in this from the beginning and if you're committed to making it to the end. All right, so here we go. What we're going to do here is create a new branch. So if I type get branch, you can see that I'm on master right now. So I'm going to do a get checkout -b to create a new branch from master, and I'm going to create version 2, or I'm sorry, video 2, and hit enter. Then what I'm going to do is do a get push set upstream, and I'm going to set my upstream origin to v2. And now we're ready to go. So we had this this v1.html. We can go ahead and close that down, and then we'll click new and we'll add v2.html. And then what I'm going to do is do a exclamation tab to give me some to give me the HTML boilerplate here. And then I'm going to say for the title we'll put JavaScript data types. All right, and then down here in the body, I'm just going to give myself some script tags, and anything that I put in here will be run in the browser, in the client's browser, as JavaScript. So I'm going to save that, and let's just go to v2.html in the browser. And what I'd like to do here is let's go ahead and do a couple things. Number one is make sure you have right-clicked on here on the browser and hit inspect to open up the inspector. And then we're always going to have this console open, and this console is going to allow us to interact with JavaScript and the document here. But we're also going to do something else called console logging. Okay, and so the console logs, we can actually log something in our code, and then what we can do is we can see those logs printed out here. So first, to do that, what we're going to do is say console.log. Okay, and inside there, what I'd like for you to do is type the word type of, and then let's do 23. Okay, so if you do that and we go back to the browser and refresh, what you're going to see is we have a console log right here. This right here is what was printed to our console because we ran this console log. Now type of 23, type of is a function basically that will tell us what the type is, and in this case of course it is a number. So we have numbers available to us inside of JavaScript. Now the other thing is there's only one type of number available in JavaScript. So in other languages we have floats and decimals and numbers, but in JavaScript all numbers are numbers. So you can do something like console log, and then you can do type of, and then we'll say 23.45. Okay, now if I do that, this should also console log number. Okay, so one thing you can also do is you can do a comma in here, and let's put a comma and some strings here, and we're just going to say decimal. Okay, and then up here let's do whole number and save this, and we'll go back and refresh, and now you see we have two console logs here. We have number, and number was actually our whole number. And then also when we did the 23.45, you can see that we put the string decimal, but the type is also just number. So all numbers are treated the same. So in fact, what we could do something like this, where we say console log, and we could do 23 plus 45, and what we get there, and we'll go back and refresh, we get 68. Now notice that the 68 is a different color. Well, don't worry about that right now. But basically, this console log can do math on these. And in fact, what we could do is 23 plus 45.56. And if we do that, it can easily add whole numbers and decimals together, okay? Now, the next thing that we want to do is talk about strings. So we have strings in, so we'll do type of hello world, and of course it gives you, it's a dead giveaway because there's oops, I did type, so type of hello world, and inside quotes. Now this is going to be seen as a string because it's in quotes, and if I go back and refresh, it does indeed say string there in our lowest console log. I'm going to add another console log, and let's see what happens if we try to do something like 23 console.log, and let's do 23 plus quote 45. Okay, and I'm going to save that and go back and refresh. And that's interesting. So what's happening here is you see 2345. So it doesn't do the math because this 45 is in quotes, and it sees this 45 as a string rather than something that it can be used to add with, okay? So make sure that you're using the correct syntax here if you're intending to add, because in JavaScript, the plus is also how we concatenate one string or one thing to another. And JavaScript doesn't really care. We can also do something like is a great number, like this. And if we go ahead and refresh, now it says 2345 is a great number. So it can just shove all kinds of stuff together concatenation wise, but if they're both types of numbers, the plus will do arithmetic here. It will sum these two, and this will do a concatenation. So make sure that you understand that this is also concatenation. Okay, so I could do something like console.log, and I'll say hello space, and then we'll concatenate on world. Okay, and if I do that, we'll refresh, and you can see that it does, it just adds those together. It doesn't add them, it concatenates the two pieces of the string together. Okay, so that is how you do concatenation, and so it is the same as addition. So make sure that you're using numbers for numbers and strings for strings, and not mixing these up unless you intend to on purpose. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about another data type that's available to us, and of course we have an array. And if you haven't been with us for the Java or for the PHP, an array can be thought of as a list. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to set up a variable, and I know, well, you know what, I'm not going to set up a variable. Let's do a console log because we haven't talked about variables yet, so I'm not going to use it. So we're going to use a console log, and to do a variable, we just use square brackets here. And then we could do something like red, white, blue. All right, so this is a list of colors, and we can put all kinds of other stuff in here. We can do numbers, so we can do anything else we want in here, and we have an array. So this is a list. So if I go back and save that and refresh now, you can see that it does a little bit different type of console log. The console log here is going to tell us how many elements are in that array. So in this case, there are 4 elements in the array, and if I can expand that and see it like here, and then also the length is right there, you know. So and in fact, if we go here now in this console log, and let's just try type of, and let's see what we get. Well, you would expect that it would say that this is an array, and in fact it is array, but instead it points out that it is an object. And that's something that's a little bit weird about JavaScript, in the fact that in JavaScript everything is an object. And the reason they do that is because you can you can do something like this, where you say dot push, and you can just add something to the end of this thing. So let's add purple. We'll hit save, and this should work. Well, it is working, except for we're not doing anything to like, it's just running a function now, or a method. So this is how you run a method on an object. So it's important to know that if you console log type of an array, it's going to say it's an object. It doesn't have a way of knowing the difference between an object and an array. So just understand that that's going to be a little bit weird. The other thing that we can do is we can do console log, and we can do an object. And to do an object, you use curly braces, and anything you put in the curly braces is an object, so that we can give this key value pairs now. And objects can be thought of more like as a dictionary, where you will have a key and a value. So here what I can do is I will do age, and we'll do 40, and I can do a comma, and I'll do another thing, and I'll say first name, and we'll do a colon, and then we'll put a string here, Curtis. We'll do another one here, and we'll say last name, Parham. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to put a semicolon at the end of this line, and I'm going to save that and show you this. And you can see that this works just fine. In fact, you don't need semicolons almost all of the time in JavaScript. I just have a habit of putting semicolons here because I am primarily a back-end PHP developer, so you'll see me using semicolons. You can either use a semicolon or you can completely leave them off. Now there are a few edge cases in JavaScript where it won't know that there's an end of the line, because based on certain things, and then in those cases, if you get an error, you might have to use a semicolon to let it know that it is a line end. So just like in PHP, the semicolon is indeed signifies that it is a line end. However, they are optional. Okay, I just want to make sure that you know that. But if we go back now and we look at that console log, you can see our object right here, and what they've done just for convenience. I don't know if I can. Oh, I can. So I can increase the font size here. And so out of convenience, what they've done is they've made the key a lighter color here, a light gray. And then our strings for the values are red, and our numbers here are blue. Now I can click down on this, and it will expand this out. And it will show me what all is in this object. And if you look at this object, it has key value pairs for everything we added. However, there's also this other thing here called prototype. And prototype there is an object itself that has a constructor and has own property and has all these methods kind of built in. It even has a getter and setter. So what is up with that? Well, in JavaScript, everything goes through, I told you that everything is an object, okay? Well, everything starts off in this base object called prototype. When everything is an object, it is actually part of prototype. And you can see that even our array here has been instantiated through the prototype, okay? And so you need to make, and you can actually see here that the prototype is an array, and the prototype in this one is an object, but it goes through something called prototype. I'm not going to get too deep into that right now, but just understand that everything becomes an object in JavaScript. So it's not like an object-oriented. You can do object-oriented programming just fine in JavaScript, but it's a little bit different to where you don't actually have a class that gets instantiated. It's just like everything gets instantiated on its own as an object. So even if you create a class in JavaScript, that class is an object. And that's, I know that's a little confusing, so I just stuff that somewhere in the back of your mind. Don't think about it too much, don't let it trip you up. But someday when it comes up, when something weird is happening in JavaScript, I want you to kind of recall the fact that everything is an object in JavaScript, and it may help you solve the issue that you're having at that time. Okay, so we can still access our values the same way. So in fact, what I'm going to do, you know what, I'm not going to go into that just yet because we haven't talked about variables or anything. So I'm just going to leave these console logs and these different object types. So we have numbers, we have strings, and then we have arrays and objects. And both arrays and objects are, you guessed it, both objects. However, the syntax for a list type thing here is going to be the square brackets, where the syntax for us to create an object, or we would call this an associative array in PHP, but this is in fact an object here in JavaScript, and it is a key value pair just like an associative array. And that's important because we can access these by the keys, and in here we have to access these by the index of the array just like we did in PHP. Alright, so I think we're going to leave it there for this video, and let me go ahead and push this up to GitHub so that you guys can grab this if you need to. So I'm going to do a git status to see what I'm at, and then a git add, and I'll do a git commit -m, and here what we're going to do is we're going to say data types. I'll do a git push, and then I'm going to do a git checkout master, and what we'll do here is we'll do a git merge v2, and then I'm going to push that on up. Okay, well with that guys, if you like some merch, we got these really sweet mugs here. You can get one of those. I think that's the cheapest thing that they allowed me to put on there, but those are pretty sweet, and I think they're around $10 or something like that. Alright guys, you can go to freeskills.life if you'd like to get that, or you can just look below the video if you're on YouTube, and I think you can see some Free Skills merch there that you can purchase. Alright guys, I'll talk to you in the next video. Peace out.